Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Had a whole bunch of people ask me about a story that popped up in several places, including the Daily Mail. Peter Belfiore wrote it for them. Homeowner must demolish $3 million mansion which was built too close to the road. We talked not too long ago about the guy in, I believe, New Zealand who had built a house, and they said it was too close to his neighbor's house, and it had to either be moved or torn down. And moving a house a couple feet is a little more difficult than it is to simply say, hey, can you move your house a couple feet? So now demolishing the house, of course, is the extreme remedy. But a judge has ruled that a $3 million luxury home in Quebec, now those are Canadian dollars, it was built less than 10 years ago, but must be demolished. And here's the kicker. The local city needs to pay for this. The ruling is the latest in an 8-year battle, a legal saga that began when the home was built too close to the street, which violated the local zoning laws in the city of Gatineau. JP can correct me on that one. The judge's decision overrules an exemption the city gave the homeowner in a bid to keep the mansion as is. So he's gotten rulings one way and then the other way. In the ruling this week, Quebec Superior Court Judge Michael Daniel said owner Patrick Mulla had every reason to believe his home met building code requirements when the city granted him permits to build back in 2013, according to Canadian press. So permits were issued to put the house where it is. That September, however, the city discovered that the planning official who approved the permits made a mistake by allowing construction to go forward on the home, which is 23 feet from the street, because homes need to be built 51 feet from the street, according to the local zoning bylaws. So they actually say your house has got to be 51 feet from the street. This house comes within 23 feet, presumably because it is so big. It is a luxury home. So instead of telling the man to stop construction on the home when they discovered the problem, the city allowed it to go forward, telling him that the problem would be taken care of later. This is how they're taking care of it. In February of 2014, just the following year, the man's family moved into the home, and in July of 2014, he was granted a minor exemption to keep it in compliance. So they said, look, we understand it's too close to the road. That was a mistake, whatever. We'll give you an exemption on that. Now, the ruling here overrides the city's exemption and said there was likely little choice except for to tear the house down. The judge sided with the neighbors who complained that the property was out of character with the rest of the neighborhood and argued that the city's exemption was an illegal abuse of power. And that's one of those things. You go through neighborhoods and look at houses, and once in a while, you see some house that just stands out like a sore thumb for whatever reason. And it depends what order the houses were built in and so on. And I've also seen entire neighborhoods where every single house was odd. Like they clearly decided to do that too. But the city I grew up in, Birmingham, Michigan, went through a transformation in the last 30 years. And when I was growing up there were streets that had big yards and little houses. And the houses might be a little ranch house with a big, big yard. And that's what, I grew up in, a little house and a big yard. And as time went by and people with money started coming into the neighborhoods, what they were doing was they'd buy the house and the property and knock the house down and then build what they call Bigfoot. And they'd build it as close as they could to the property limits. And then they'd build it up. And so now there's these gigantic homes on these streets. But there's always a few holdouts, so that you'll be driving along, you'll see big house, little tiny house, big yard, big house, big house, big house. And I know at one point in time the city tried to stop that, but apparently they tried to stop it too late, so they never got anywhere with it. But so these things do happen. But apparently in this case, the issue here is how far do you have to be back from the road? And it's pretty clear that they say 51 feet. And instead of 51 feet, this house is 23 feet. And that's the kind of thing that should be obvious to anyone. Any builder knows that there are these kinds of rules. So how far do you have to be from the property line? How far do you have to be from the road? All of these things are known to people in the business. So the fact that this got done in the first place, that's odd. But then they gave an exemption Okay, so now they're saying, well, it has to be torn down, but the city's got to pay for the tear down. And the question is, does the city have to pay to replace the house? So had he known the risk of eventual demolition, he would not have continued with the construction. That's what the judge says. So reassuring him about this technical error, which will be corrected by a minor exemption at the expense of the city, he continued to invest his retirement fund in this house to the tune of approximately $3 million. The city had asked the court not to order the home's destruction, but the judge noted that it had not offered any alternatives. What can you do? Can you move it back 25 or 30 feet? It doesn't look like it. So the attorney representing the neighbors who had complained said his clients are pleased. They're happy with the decision. They ask that their privacy be respected. So there are some people right now where we're going, well, yeah, the neighbors, wait a second. But, they're going to have a demolition going on shortly. But presumably after that's over, it'll calm down a little bit. One neighbor did tell CTV News, I understand the frustration when this was built, but after so long, I also feel bad for the owner. So apparently not all the neighbors want this house torn down. Another neighbor said, nobody was happy when it was being built. So if it's coming down when I would think there's a few people here who are a little more than happy. So that neighbor says, he's looking forward to it. Separately, in 2019, the homeowner filed a lawsuit against the city for $3.6 million in damages, saying that city officials had misled him and knew of the potential consequences if they allowed construction to go forward. He is seeking to recoup the $2.9 million in construction costs, as well as more than $600,000 for damage to his reputation and his inconvenience for himself and his family. In that suit, the city has argued that the building subcontractors that the homeowner hired were to blame for the error by not accounting for local bylaws in the construction plans. The results of that suit are pending. The homeowner's attorney did not immediately return a request for comment. And of course, the city has 30 days to appeal the ruling. They told the Canadian press, our legal department is in the process of analyzing everything. Therefore, no comments will be made on the file. So, again, you're walking around on a vacant piece of property going, I'm going to build my dream home here. All of the houses on the street are back here. They're back here. And you want to build your house out to here. Wouldn't that occur to somebody that there's a problem where if you drew a straight line down the fronts of these houses, they're all like this, and all of a sudden your house goes like this, and it goes back like this? Wouldn't that raise a red flag for you? It seems to me it would. But like I said, the builder should know that. Other people involved. Building inspectors, by the way, my understanding is, will come out from time to time during construction to make sure, for instance, that the foundation is proper, that the electrical is proper, that the plumbing is proper. There's different phases, and I'm not sure in Canada what order they do those things or how often they do them. But there are going to be times, it's not like simply you apply for a building permit, pay the money, and no one ever shows up. Somebody eventually does show up. And the interesting thing about this violation of the zoning law is that this is something that would have been immediately apparent the moment they broke ground, pretty much, because once the foundation is in, you can tell by the foundation, presumably roughly where the house is going to be. Foundation's over here, the house is over here. Now, generally speaking, the foundation and the house do tend to correlate in some way. So somebody walking around looking at the foundation should go, wait a second. You're awfully close to that road. And all your neighbors are back here. But your house goes out to here? That should have occurred to somebody. But the homeowner is granted an exemption. And he relied on that exemption. And so that reliance right there is something that a court could say was reasonable for him. In which case, his reasonable reliance on that assurance that he had the exemption. Once he goes forward from that point, and then the city loses, in essence, his case against the city starts to look pretty good. So right now, what we're looking at is pending appeal. The city has been ordered to demolish that mansion at their cost. The man is suing the city saying, I want my $3 million back, plus some money for the aggravation, because this is all your fault. And by the way, this goes back to 2013. 2013. So again, it's a mental exercise. It's a thought experiment, but ask yourself where you were in 2013. Right? A lot has happened since then for many of us. So since 2013, what have you been doing? This guy has been building a house since then, and apparently has moved into it, and now it's going to get torn down, pending appeal. So we'll see what happens. But again, it's sent to me by a lot of people. Mark, Greg, Alan, Josh, Jim, and Heather, thank you very much. From the Daily Mail, but also other places like the Canadian Press. Homeowner must demolish $3 million mansion, which is built too close to the road. City's got to pay for it, and the man's suing the city as a result. Questions, comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I was never someone who was at ease with happiness.